Hello, I'm John Molesky, and this is Current Issues. How far should we go to save an endangered species from extinction? Well, environmentalists, developers, and others are debating this question as they prepare for the reauthorization process for the Endangered Species Act of 1973.
In the age of human progress, we've neglected the natural world around us. As we continue to develop taller buildings and wider roads, we've begun to ignore the wildlife that existed here long before.
It's a bit disturbing to see natural habitat being replaced with artificial habitat.
When you think about where you live, where this school is located, this was once all eastern deciduous forest. And now especially, we really see that on the East Coast. The eastern deciduous forest, all the wetlands we used to have, all this great habitat has been paved over. It's been made into houses with lawns, it's parking lots, it's strip malls, it's roads.
The rapid loss of species we are seeing today is estimated by experts to be between 1,000 and 10,000 times higher than the background or expected natural extinction rate. Unlike the mass extinction events of geological history, the current extinction phenomenon is one for which a single species, ours, appears to be almost wholly responsible. Despite more and more species becoming endangered, there is one impeding act that has been slowly stopping the destruction of natural species.
The Endangered Species Act is actually this amazing statute, federal statute. So it was enacted in 1973. At the time, it was amazing. It was this amazing new law because it provided comprehensive protection for endangered species. And there had never been anything like that in the United States.
The Endangered Species Act is actually, when you look at it globally, it's one of the strongest pieces of environmental policy for protecting species, which is pretty remarkable in and of itself.
Yet as the sixth mass extinction comes upon us, the Endangered Species Act needs to face evaluation and revision in order to save the species around us.
It is not an efficient law. No, the process has not been efficient. The planning takes forever. It is not efficient. It's absolutely been effective. It is the best set of ideas that people had in the 1970s and the 1980s on how to save wildlife. So it reflects state-of-the-art science in 1970. But so does a cassette deck, right? And we don't use cassette decks anymore for a reason. We're still using that old tool. So the ESA could really thrive if we could find a way to rebuild it, to hold on to its strengths and fix some of its weaknesses.
Thank goodness we have the Endangered Species Act. It has done a lot of good for species. And if you think about, if we did not have that, I think there's lots of room for improvement in terms of the act, in terms of both the ways in which, for example, the federal government and the states can work better together, the federal government, the states, and the private landowners can work together, and of course bringing more funding to implementation of the act and helping actually incentivize proactively for the species.
Yahweh Lee, Vice President of Endangered Species Conservation at Defenders of Wildlife, explained that the ever heavier burdens placed on the law have forced it to function like a chaotic, overcrowded emergency room, a place of last resort.
On it, and I'll refer back to the front page of the Chicago Tribune where it says protected with an asterisk. Even as the polar bear is added to the endangered species list, U.S. officials exempt oil and gas drillers and warn they won't let the animal status affect greenhouse gas regulation.
That's right. And this exemption or this limitation on the protection of the polar bear, it's a lot like one of my colleagues said, giving the polar bear a lifeboat, but one that's full of holes.
One of the things about the Endangered Species Act is you can think of it as a life support system. So under the federal Endangered Species Act, a species does not get protected until it's actually listed as threatened or endangered. Do you wait until it is actually in danger of extinction within the foreseeable future? Obviously, it makes more sense to try to protect species before they get to that point. But if we're going to truly protect biodiversity and try to protect species before they need the life support of the Endangered Species Act. I think that would be a new initiative for this country.
There's, a handful of species that receive the vast majority of resources, and then hundreds of plants that have pretty much no funding whatsoever. If we really had substantial funding for species, you could change having endangered species on your property from being a liability to something, to an asset.
The ESA, while an important piece of legislation, needs more funding or a revamp in order to be more efficient during a time in which more animals are going endangered than we've ever seen before.